We have three professionals, and I'd like to ask Morgan, Frederick, and Steve to come out now if they're already here and mic'd up. Are they ready? We've got to bring one more chair. They're not ready yet. They've got to run. Here they come. Come on up, gentlemen, and we need one more chair from the back. Morgan, as you can see, is with Chevron. Frederick is with Microsoft, and Steve is with Koch. And Tracy, we need two more chairs as well. Tracy is with Emergent, so we need two more chairs. And I wanted to make sure we started on time and maybe grab a little extra, because this is the future of success for any issue. Is that corporate America has changed. Let me move this back a little bit, I hope you folks can see. Corporate America has changed from the day, I'm 60 years old, I grew up reading the New York Times on Sunday. Mobile would take a quarter-page ad on the Sunday New York Times. That was the only corporate advocacy I ever saw. The mobile quarter-page editorial. So I'd like to go down the row and ask them to tell you a little bit about themselves, what they do and what their theory of advocacy is before I ask them questions, because corporate advocacy is changing the way America decides its political future. Let's start with you, Morgan.
Okay, well thank you very much, and thank you for having me. My name is Morgan Krinkla. I'm with Chevron. And you know, as you guys probably know, I work in an industry where people go to work every day trying to put us out of business. And you need not look any farther than right here in Colorado, where just this week, two petitions were filed trying to put measures on the ballot to ban fracking and basically oil and gas development in the state. And so Chevron and industries like ours have always been very good at what we call sort of grass tops advocacy, you know, dealing from our top leadership to the decision makers, the elected officials, the policy makers. Meanwhile, our opponents, or those who want to put us out of business, have spent the last several years building up grassroots advocacy. And you guys probably see it in the communities where you live, and we certainly see it in a lot of these actions around the country that are trying to put us out of business. So one of the things that we have really made a priority is to continue the grass tops, but really build that grassroots advocacy. And one of the things that we have found is that some of our most articulate and passionate spokespeople and advocates are our own employees and retirees. And we have developed an employee advocacy network where employees and retirees want to do it. They want to advocate for the company and for energy policies. They just don't know if they have the permission to do it, how do they do it, what do they say, at what forums do they go to. So we've really made it a priority to build out this network of our employees and retirees and give them the tools that they can use or that they need to advocate in their own communities. And we've seen, this is about 2 years old, this program, we've seen pretty good success on some of these local measures in Pennsylvania, California, and other places where we've gotten employees and retirees involved. And I think we're at a time when, now more than ever, with digital and social media, we have tools at our disposal to become advocates ourselves, to get other people to advocate for us, and what we like to call it advocacy at scale. And it's sort of the sum of all parts, using the grassroots, grass tops, and sort of everything in between through digital and social media and created content to create an echo chamber where we're promoting and advocating pro-energy policies and policies that will be beneficial to the industry and to the company, to the economy, to jobs, all of those things. So that's where we're looking at advocacy at Chevron at this time.
And a quick question, which I'll do to each of you, a follow-up to your intro. What is the universe of employees and retirees and perhaps shareholders? How many people are we talking about?
Well, we just started the program. It's an opt-in program. We have over 5,000 right now, which is different than some companies that just blast out to all their employees. We want to make it a two-way conversation, so we're not going to them every time we need something. It's a two-way conversation, so if Memorial Day is coming up and gas prices are high, we know as an employee of Chevron, somebody's going to get asked at their barbecue, family barbecue, why are gas prices so high? So we'll proactively send them, here's some information that you can talk about this weekend. So right now it's about 5,000, but it's definitely growing.
That's amazing. Steve Lombardo, of course, is with Koch, and I have to full disclosure, my daughter was a Koch fellow until she married the Navy and left. So I have a love of your company anyway that I learned from a child. And I also spent a lot of time with Charles when his book came out, Good Profit. And it's an amazing book, which I would recommend everyone in this room they didn't ask me to say this, read good profit, you'll understand it. But boy, you have a challenge because you walk into a room and everybody has an opinion about what you're going to say, right, Steve?
Yes. Hugh, thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here and talking to everybody. And I am with Koch Industries. My name is Steve Lombardo, and it is a challenge periodically. I just got my Google alert, my phone buzzed, and it's the Google Alert media said that the news story that just came out in a sort of left-leaning organization is the Koch brothers' plan to take over America, which is actually a downgrade from what I usually get, which is the Koch brothers' plan to take over the world. So I'm going to consider this progress, and I'm doing a great job. It's a pleasure to be here, and let me tell you a little bit, and I'm not going to take too long because I think we want to get some questions from Hugh and others, but the Koch Industries, I started 2.5 years ago, and we wanted to tell the story about Koch a little more. It's a privately held company, and as you know, the left side of the political spectrum has taken shots at Koch, and our shareholders, Charles and David Koch, are politically and public policy active, and that's what one of the things I want to talk about is that Charles's involvement in particular, and David's as well, both philanthropically and in the educational world, has been ongoing for almost 40, 50 years. So this isn't anything new. The political element really started, 10, 15 years ago, and frankly, it started in 2003 during the George Bush administration, and that's when the political network started, and it was in response to what many people like Charles and David and others, many others, thought was a growth in government that was unsustainable. But my job when I came on was to tell the story about a company, and that's a little bit, I've got a hybrid situation, right? Because we've got shareholders who care very much about this country and want to talk about things that they stand for, and I'll get to that in a second. We also have 60,000 employees here in the U.S., a third of which are unionized. We have 100,000 employees globally. We make products people use every day, from the carpet you walk in on, to the coffee cup you use to drink your morning coffee, the paper towels you use to wipe it up when you spill it. And we believe that we help people improve their lives. We're in the oil and gas business. We are in the paper products business. We recently acquired a company named Molex that does connectors for iPhones, among other things. We own Stainmaster Carpet. This is a diverse company that employs a lot of people that in manufacturing, both quite a bit, which one of the largest manufacturers here in the United States. We have shareholders who care deeply about some issues affecting this country, and as Charles will say it, he believes that we are heading toward a two-tiered society, in which you're going to have the lower end and the higher end. And what's the problem is that there are barriers to opportunity. And I'll talk, I talk a little bit about those barriers being in three big chunks. One of them is that in what we're advocating for, criminal justice reform and the elimination of occupational licensing, much of it, which we think is harming the country. And this is one of the big things that Charles talks about, and that is, you may disagree with someone else, you may not agree with them on everything, but you can work with them on some things to improve people's lives. Criminal justice reform. We have 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's inmates. Something's wrong there. Now, we're not talking about being soft on crime. These are non-violent offenders who have received unjust or unfair sentences, and it costs money to have them in the prison system, and when they get out, they are not contributing to society. And so we need to help that. We need to reform. We're working with the Obama administration. We're working with Van Jones. We don't agree with them on everything, hardly. We disagree on most things. But on this, there's some level of agreement. And Charles believes that you have to have tolerance and belief in supporting other people's ideas and listening to other people, and that's important to us. We'll also talk about corporate welfare. Charles believes that subsidies, handouts, mandates, many of which we take, but we lobby against all of them because they distort the markets. And by distorting markets, it's a status quo system, right? You just keep those in place are in place longer. And the innovators, whether it be the Ubers of the world or others, can't innovate, can't break into a market because the market is distorted through government handouts that basically are picking winners and losers. And that's one of the things. And the final thing I'll say that we advocate for, and we believe companies, private or public, do need to take stances on issues. And the last one is free expression and free exchange of ideas. There are many people in this country today who believe you should shut down free speech, that you shut down opposition when someone disagrees with you. We cannot disagree with that more. We should have tolerance for ideas across the spectrum. And free speech leads to the free exchange of ideas. Free exchange of ideas lead to innovation. Innovation leads to growth. So there's my pitch.
Steve, my first quick follow-up for you. What do you do about the other side of the philanthropy? I came out of the Lincoln Center in a concert and I saw that David had built the concert hall. I know that he runs or has funded the most innovative cancer research program in the world, perhaps. How do you tell people that when they hear Koch and they click off? I mean, how do you break through that?
Well, it's not easy because we also don't want to. He's contributed nearly $750 million to cancer research, including the MIT Integrative Research Center, which is really revolutionary. This is something he truly believes in. We have a hard time actually talking about that because we don't want it to be that we're doing it just for reputation. It's not. It's something near and dear. He's a cancer survivor, and he wants to help others, and this is something he feels strongly about. Look, all I can tell you is it's hand-to-hand combat every day, trying to tell the story about people who care about this country, who you may not agree with on all issues. We get that. But we just every day got to keep telling our story. I don't think there's a magic wand.
Tracy, you will have seen on television often as a spokesperson for the Republican National Committee, as a spokesperson for Governor Palin when she was our national candidate. Now with Emergent BioSolutions, she represents really kind of the new corporate advocate on the block. So Tracy, what's your problem set compared to what you've heard thus far, and how are you going about it?
Well, I would say, first of all, it's great to be here, having my clinical background. It's neat to be in this company. It's completely different. That's why this has been so interesting. And we're not a household name, and we don't ever want to become a household name. And I'll tell you why. We are a global biopharmaceutical specialty company that focuses on developing and manufacturing vaccines and treatments against public health threats, those being anthrax, biological threats, chemical warfare, as well as Zika, Ebola, pandemic flu. So to the extent that our products are never used or had to be in use, we see that as a good thing. Having said that, you probably know us as we're the maker of BioThrax, which is the only FDA licensed anthrax vaccine. And since our company's been in business about 18 years, we've delivered about over 105 million doses of this to the strategic national stockpile. So if there is an outbreak, the government has that, and there should be that reassurance that they're really prepared. And our goal as a company is to give them the tools they need to be prepared. So corporate advocacy is top of mind for us. But it's different than these guys. We've got different challenges. First of all, not being a household name. We have close relationships with the government and lawmakers at every level, but we're a publicly traded company. We are under FDA watch, obviously, being in the pharmaceutical world, and we're a government contractor. So there are a robust set of challenges and restraints under which we can operate in our advocacy. So that forces us to be a little creative. We focus on relationships, as I said, with policymakers, corporate social responsibility, something that's very near and dear to our chairman's heart. So protecting those who protect us in terms of that we give our vaccines to servicemen, working to give vaccines away that are almost near expiry to first responders free because the states can't afford them. So really engaging in that philanthropy and that corporate social responsibility. Also a more holistic approach in terms of our reputation and how our executives, our voices are heard within the company. We know that we're a small company, so we like to align with other companies, and we're part of national associations of manufacturers. We have the Biosecurity Alliance Foundation that we helped found, which brings companies together to really help them deliver public policy proposals and educate folks on the threat that we face and the challenges that vaccine companies face. It's a very difficult business to be in, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. That's why a lot of big pharmas don't touch vaccines. So we need a little help from the government so we can then provide for them. One thing that's interesting, though, in terms of Ebola and Zika, these have been two issues that are all over the news where we haven't needed to be a corporate advocate because the news cycle is doing our advocacy for us. And actually the government comes to us and says, how can you help us? How can you help us produce these vaccines and therapeutics? So we have unique challenges, and then some things are a little bit easier for us, but I would say it's a little counterintuitive, but the government really appreciates our efforts in terms of government relations and helping lawmakers understand kind of what we need. And that's because if there is a massive bioterrorist outbreak, who's going to be the first ones that are blamed if we're not prepared? Frankly, the government. So they want our help.
My follow-up to that comes right. Last week on Meet the Press, Rich Scott was our guest, and the first question out of the box was, Zika has landed in Miami. And you know, this could go from 0 to 100 in panic terms very, very quickly. How is that impacting your life? Because managing expectations of cure is going to become front and center, I imagine, for you very, very quickly.
Well, first of all, probably setting expectations. But unfortunately, vaccines take a long time to be developed and go through the approval process. Luckily, the government has some kind of wiggle room. If there is an emergency, they can delegate certain vaccine candidates as orphan drug. So if they're not necessarily all the way baked, they can still be tested and still be used. But it's something that we're very much engaged on. And again, I think it was like last fall, the government came to us to kind of talk about how we can work together on Zika. So it's clearly something that's at the top of mind of our industry partners and the government and everyday friends and family. It's something people are asking. People are changing their travel plans because of Zika. So it's at the forefront.
Right now, Fred Humphries is from Microsoft. The perfectly executed corporate communication strategy. The board of corporate communication. No one has a bad opinion of Microsoft until this year. So it's like watching the Olympic divers getting all 10s to a belly flop, and that's common core. So I'm just curious, that's not even yours, it's Mr. Gates. What do you do when a affiliated program laps over into your corporate brand when you've got this perfectly executed strategy and all of a sudden common core arrives like the meteor?
So to answer that question, let me just talk briefly a little bit about Microsoft. First of all, good morning. It's great to be here. When I think of Microsoft and I think of issue advocacy, I'd like to start off with our mission, right? To empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And another one, that's one of our core pillars, right? Freedom to innovate. We're a little different from a couple of the other panelists in the sense that at this time, there's not been a whole lot of creep by government in our space. And we need to make sure that continues to stay that way. To be able to continue to produce, have different technology solutions and things of that nature. We in this country are the leaders in the world when it comes to technology. Just not Microsoft, right? There's plenty of others, from small to mid-sized business, because quite frankly, government and that freedom to innovate and making sure there's no barriers to innovation is really not a problem so far of that aspect. And so the issues that we're focusing on, privacy and making sure our one's privacy rights is protected, which is getting really complicated because of how much technology everybody's using and what we're collecting and things of that nature. And we gotta have trust. We're a company of trust. If you break that trust, right, quite frankly, if you look from the business side, you lose that business. And you gotta make sure you maintain that trust. Then as you think about, like, from a property rights, you think about intellectual property, right? That is a driver of this country where we're leading because we have strong intellectual property rights as well. And then you have to think about cybersecurity. Then the last thing I would just say to answer the question is that we're in an interesting time of what we're trying to do on issue advocacy. I call it the fourth industrial revolution. You know, you go from horse and buggy to cars, you have electricity, but now you have this thing called the cloud that nobody knows what it is, which is a bunch of data centers. And you have artificial intelligence, AI, you have bots, you have other different technology solutions. You have driverless cars that are on the horizon. And what we need to do as a company, which we're really kind of doubling down on, is to make sure that the workforce skills of the future are trying to be addressed. Whether right or wrong, all of us have to do lifelong learning and make a commitment to science, technology, and engineering and math. Because it really is, and we don't have the answer on this change where they're eliminating jobs. And you might say, well, wait a minute, that's just Microsoft. No, 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 no. The diversity of Koch Industries, everything that Steve named has a technology component. Technology component here from a STEM. Chevron, the same thing. If you're in agriculture to financial, it's going to be big data. And so for us to continue to be leaders, as we're trying to do advocacy, is to do some education and put some skin in the game to make sure that we're helping to, that income inequality that Charles was talking about. You look over the history, that's real. And it's been changing the workforce and the jobs needs. And so we're trying to do our part, right? As a private company, a corporation, to make a difference, to get uptick on an important area for us to continue to be a vibrant country and for people to have growth and a good living. Now, yeah, that gets tough when you have a founder that has sometimes big brand, big name, gets out there and supports a cause, and then he says, well, we have a wall. and sometimes, honestly, I'll be in meetings, and it's a good blend. Oh, we love what your founder and chairman, no longer chairman, board member, is doing on X space. And then something like Common Core, you're in the room and you catch a lot of grief, and then you have to let folks know, hey, this is what Microsoft's position is on X and Y. And so it balances out, to be honest with you, sometimes, but yes, that's something that you have to explain and educate and deal with, an issue that, quite frankly, a lot of people have strong opinions on.
So my follow-up to you, there are two people on the panel who have founders with big brands and companies with different brands, and there are two that don't. I mean, we don't know Chevron and Emergent through a personality the way we know Koch and Microsoft. How do you manage the interface with your big brand founders' advocacy issues?
I am really anal and make sure that my team, because I lead the government affairs for Microsoft, to make sure that they don't try to in any way bring up that brand.
Interesting.
You need to focus on Microsoft.
Interesting.
Right? And what our values are and what we're doing. That's just, I actually think that that's just not appropriate, right? In our space. I mean, we're a publicly held company, and just make sure that you don't confuse the two. Because there are going to be differences on many different issues that we might advocate on public policy. So I really adhere to the wall.
To the wall. All right, my second round of questions comes to the people in this room. You four have to manage relationships with all 500 people in this room who represent 5 million people who are on board. How are you doing that? I've got a son in the crisis communications business in DC. All day long he has Google alerts going on for his clients.
There's also Bing alerts too.
Bing alerts, okay.
And they're very nice. So we get a different kind of alert. Just won't let you know, right? I mean, just say, okay, help myself. I got to do a little product placement. Thank you. Indulging me.
Oh, that was a pro tip move right there. I hope you people saw that move. That was a pro tip move. All right, how do you deal? What are you doing about someone today doesn't like something you said? So they start a diary and they begin to rag on you. And what is your response to the new world where everyone is an editor? And let's walk down the panel.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the beauty of technology today is everyone is an advocate, everyone is a journalist, everyone is an editor, everyone has an opinion and has an outlet to make that opinion known. Those same tools are available to us as corporations, and just one quick example I'll use. We have a refinery in Richmond, California. It's right outside of San Francisco, across the bay. The refinery's been there since before really the city was there, but the city's grown around it, and obviously that can create some conflict. The city of Richmond, high crime, news organizations pretty much abandoned it. and start focusing on Oakland, San Francisco. And what we really found through polling and focus groups is people in Richmond are proud of where they live, they're proud of what's going on in that community, and they wanted something to express that. So Chevron actually started an online news publication in Richmond, California. It's called the Richmond Standard. It's all very transparent. And we hired a former journalist who writes on a daily basis what's going on, what local church groups are doing, what the local high schools are doing. And it's all positive news to create that pride in Richmond. Chevron has a column once a month called Chevron Speaks, where we get to advocate our position or our opinion on certain things. But it gives us an outlet, and it was widely panned when it was first started. It was called corporate journalism. The Guardian did a whole story on it. I mean, it was highly criticized. But now it's to the point it gets more traffic than the San Francisco Chronicle. All of the city council members, it's on their press list. So it's filling a need, and we're using those same tools. We're also, a lot of corporations are adopting tools used by campaigns, especially data analytics, to better understand who their stakeholders are, what motivates them, where are possible risks for activism. So how do we better engage with those stakeholders? So it's a really interesting time on sort of the advocacy side of things, because we're taking those things that a lot of people do in campaigns and bringing them in-house to better understand how we can engage with the public and create trust so that we can continue to operate.
Create trust, interesting, right? Steve, what about you?
Well, you know, in an environment where literally thousands every day hits that have Koch or Koch Industries or Koch Brothers or Charles and David Koch in it, we have to pick and choose what we're going to respond to and or advocate for or against. Often the shareholders want to correct the record, and sometimes we have to use some of these analytics and our own gut instinct to decide when and where we respond and how we respond. But much in the same way as Chevron, we're trying to balance both reactive as well as proactive and go out and tell our stories. We started a We Are Koch campaign that was about 60,000 employees telling their story about how they innovate using using entrepreneurial spirit and integrity and innovation as part of their jobs. So we tell those stories in a way, and we use social media for that. We also have been more involved on the education side and trying something that Charles and his wife Liz feel deeply about, and that's youth entrepreneurs, and they started an organization. We're also working with the United Negro College Fund now in helping kids, disadvantaged kids from across the country, learn about entrepreneurship and business and how to succeed and work ethic that's involved. So I think there's a balance of reacting to the right things, but also telling our story more. And you just got to be more proactive. I applaud you for that idea in Richmond, because that's what we need more of.
It's interesting, one of probably my biggest regrets since being at this job is alerting my boss and company leadership to the old Google News alerts and how they can set up something that every time our company's mentioned, good, bad, or ugly, they get a ding and then I get a ping, right? It doesn't 5 a.m. I know whether or not it's going to be a good and bad day. But a lot of that is picking kind of, as you said, strategically what you respond to and how and what makes sense. Like any industry, we have our competition and we have our detractors because we are the only one that has been delivering the anthrax vaccine, and it is such a important thing and a robust financial commitment from the government. We obviously have detractors about the vaccine. With that, we take their concerns and we double down on people that are actually using the vaccine and are actually glad that they can have that security and that peace of mind really when they're out, whether it's folks going to protect our nation overseas or it's first responders. We have, they've come out and done op-eds and press releases and really been our voices and our surrogates, because that is just like a campaign. That is far more powerful than anything that a corporate spokesperson is going to say, or that a corporate executive, or even a scientist is going to say, is to have the folks that are actually the ones that we're protecting speak to it. So that's probably something that we find to be most impactful. In terms of our corporate social responsibility, STEM is something that's very important to us because we understand there needs to be, frankly, a robust employment base, and it starts in elementary school. So we sponsor these labs that go, like mobile labs that go around in Maryland and Michigan and give kids in which neighborhoods wouldn't have the opportunity to have these science experiments because the school districts can't afford it. They then can have that interaction and they can get a tour of our lab and say, you know what, I think I want to be a scientist. And it sounds far off, but you need, with something like vaccine development and manufacturing that is so niche, you really need to do that forward thinking in terms of laying the groundwork for a successful workforce. Something that I'm involved in recently is an effort to help kind of rebrand the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area as kind of biohealth capital region, if you will, to help attract more of a talent pool, and talk about the fact that it's unique in that you do have this proximity to lawmakers, to NIH, and there are a lot of advantages companies to do business there.
Right.
For us, it's just like everyone else on the panel. You really have to just kind of weed through and just decide, okay, what's strategic and what's not, and what you have to respond to. And those are actually, quite frankly, pretty tough calls on different aspects. Because one of the things today about media, because it can be just blogger, this or that. It can just, particularly at a big company like us, that tends to be people like to focus on. It can just take off. So making those calls are just difficult as well. And this year's actually been an interesting year when it comes to what I'd say kind of crisis communications in the sense of the big encryption debate, when to weigh in, what to say. And today when you talk about privacy and security, right, and national security, there's some interesting areas, and you want to make sure you land it right on something that could be actually nuanced, and some things are just black and white. That you have to do. And then how do you use today, which I think is an incredible, powerful tool if used right, in the right way, as a company weighs in. One of the things that recently, we have logs, we have all the different things, is that when it comes to privacy, we had a case that we just won in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals having to do with the DOJ asking us for some information. We realized that the data was in Ireland, that the information that they wanted, the individual was a non-U.S. citizen, and we said, no, we're not giving you that data. Because we are about protecting people's privacy. That's not just here in the U.S., but just globally. And this is where technology is different. It's in the cloud, and we know exactly what that data is. And that's extraterritorial reach on the part of the DOJ. We said no, and they wanted the district. We wanted the Second Circuit, and to protect one's privacy rights. And so it gets no press on that one aspect. So how do you use the power of using your voice in a blog? And the next thing you know, it's amazing. It just picks up and takes off, and how you can get information out there that's helpful on something that I think is very, very important. That's not just in the Microsoft self-interest, but it's in people's self-interest when it comes to privacy. So, but it's a really tough.
Last question, and we have 2 minutes or so for each of you. Prime Minister Modi came to the United States this year, and I was talking with Speaker Ryan about that, and he said it's a new dawn. They have more 4.0 students in India than we have students total in the United States. So 3 of you are quintessentially American companies. I think Chevron and Koch and Microsoft, quintessential American brands. Emergent's not old enough to be a quintessential American brand. But it's one world, even with the trade debate. How are you doing advocacy internationally? I'm going to start with you, Fred, and come this way. How are you morphing into an internationally based advocacy effort while you are quintessentially American companies?
So, I mean, we all must remember, right? The U.S. only comprises 4.5% of the population in this world. And we at Microsoft, and Fred is a strong believer in trading, and we have a global world. That's an aspect that's there. But when we look at the talent, I want to keep it real. We look all over the world for the talent, and there is good talent there in India. But at the same time, there's great talent here in the U.S. So it's a matter of what our needs are. Most of our employees and most of our research takes place here in the U.S. We're 118,000 employees. About 60% of those employees are here. in the U.S. We do have a presence in India. We do have a presence in China. We're in over 120 countries where there's a presence. But we will know where the talent is, and we'll look for it. And so, as we look at it, it's we believe in high-skilled immigration on the H-1B aspect. But what we've been doing, we're focusing on how do we get more. I mean, this is a fact that just should that's I think kind of important. I think it's about 80,000 students graduate every year with a CS degree. 50% are foreign nationals, right? The jobs of the future require CS. We got to do a better job of getting more kids in the U.S. to go into the STEM. So we as a private company, right, a publicly held company, we're getting in the game on focusing on, we have a program called TEALS, where we can go in and have our employees teach the teachers how to teach computer science. And we're advocating for getting greater resources that's controlled by the states to go to the states for education for computer science so that we can grow. Because one of the things that nobody can beat us in, and I've had the pleasure of traveling the world, we got the know-how, we got the intellect, and we have the entrepreneurial spirit. And that's something that you don't have in these other places. They got talent.
We also have an international presence and have offices in Singapore, Munich, a presence in the UK, a presence in South Africa for quite some time. We've partnered with the Malaysian government at one point on a joint venture there. So it's something that clearly is top of mind for us, as well as international sales, because a lot of governments want to buy this vaccine because frankly, there isn't one like it. And they understand, particularly with everything going on in the world right now, that you can't be too conservative with biopreparedness. I think we're going to see that more and more from other countries. But frankly, our priority is the U.S. government, and we have a limit of how many vaccines that we can make. So our core kind of focus is making sure we have the tools to be successful to deliver for the U.S. government, for the servicemen abroad, and for the American people. So that's really our primary focus, although there are some efforts overseas.
Steve, do you have that luxury of having one focus?
It's I will say this though. I agree with a lot of things that have been said. The importance of the workforce. That's something we care deeply about. A skilled workforce. That somehow in this country we've come to demonize those people in skilled labor jobs, and we're talking about ranging from engineers to welders. We employ a lot of those people that are backbone of this country and other markets around the world. We have operations in 50 countries, so we care deeply about that because that demonization of those people is wrong. And we need to look to what are people's comparative advantage, how do they contribute to society, what makes them happy, and allow to grow. And we care about that, and that's why we're involved in Skills USA and other organizations. I will say one thing on the globalization thing that we care deeply about, and that's free trade. I can't talk about that enough. It's when we start to put up barriers to free trade is when we're going to have real problems around the world, and it'll lead to continued economic decline or stagnation. Free up trade is one of the biggest things that will allow us to grow and innovate. So we're a big fan of that.
Morgan, last word to you.
Okay, well, Chevron may be a quintessentially American company, but we go where the oil is, and we have a global footprint. And international advocacy secures our license to operate in those places. We're only there by invitation of those host governments, a lot of times in partnership with those host governments. And so we want to make sure that we are seen as a partner of choice, that we bring technology, that we bring good American business practices and ethics to those places, but that we're also members of that community, and that the community is better off because we're there. We focus on economic development, education, and health in a lot of the communities where we operate. And I'm not just talking about in Nigeria or Thailand. Right here in the U.S., in Appalachia, Pennsylvania area, we're instituting some of the same programs to build those networks that we are overseas. So international advocacy is extremely important to us and important to our business.
I have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to tell one quick story. I've done 25,000 interviews in 20 years of broadcast, and the Charles Koch interview included one thing that sticks in my mind. He likes to hire people from Wichita State Shockers. He lives in, we got some Shockers here? I didn't even know what a Shocker was when they came to beat Ohio State in the Final 16 2 years ago. But I'm curious, and it's 30 seconds each. Is talent really now across the board in the United States that way? Can you find the talent that you need for your companies anywhere, whether it's the backdoor community college parties? Have we, in other words, made the meritocracy flat in the United States?
No, I think this focus on STEM is, from all of us, is we need to build a pipeline, especially in our industry, petrochemical engineers, geologists, people like that. We've invested heavily in colleges that produce those types of degrees because we need them, we need more of them. So hence the focus on STEM from our company.
Yeah, listen, we're a firm believer that you can find a lot of talented people who aren't necessarily going to Ivy League schools. But one of the things that Charles talks a lot about is hiring first for virtue and second for talent. If a person doesn't have the integrity and the honor and the kinds of things that, then that person will do damage. If Charles would say he'd rather hire them if they're low on integrity rather than be dumb than smart, because they can do a lot of damage in your company. So we look to virtue and integrity. That's something that's really important, and it's fabric throughout the company.
I would say particularly we've said there's a bit of a vacuum for whatever reason with women in science. And that's an area where we've really put kind of our effort into encouraging and exposing young women and little girls from all socioeconomic areas to take a second look at science. You know, and it's kind of ironic I'm here at this company because science was never my thing in high school. I was all about communications and politics, but it is, you know, it's something that could not be more important. And we look at it not just, you know, focused on the tomorrow's leaders today, but at the highest education level, and that's why we have fellowships with Johns Hopkins and encouraging and funding people that want to study against finding a vaccine against malaria, chikungunya, you know, looking ahead. So there's this crop of threats today, Zika, Ebola, and we're working on those, but we also want to look ahead because it's going to be something different tomorrow and next year and beyond.
Last word, Fred.
So I would start off with first, we in this country are the leaders of the world when it comes to just education. We're still the envy of the world, particularly on the higher education front. It's where everyone wants to come get educated. Second, I think we got to be more intentional on getting people to go into the STEM piece. One of the things that you're seeing throughout the world is countries are like being very laser focused of making sure that they're those who have the aptitude and the skills are kind of being shepherded into this space. One of the things that we have that what we try to focus on is how do we make sure we're exposing folks to the opportunities and that they understand if you go into STEM, you can do X, Y, and Z, and this is the future. So educating folks about those opportunities that it's not just at a Microsoft, but it's at some Internet of Things company or some startup that's taking place. And then the last thing is that I want to pick up on something Steve said that's really, really important today as a company. You know, and we talk about it all the time. Values matter. Values matter, and you need to have the right values, and that is definitely a factor as you're looking to hiring. And then, quite frankly, yeah, we hire from a lot of Ivies, but the truth of the matter is, if you have talent, you're going to have an opportunity at Microsoft. It could be Wichita State, it could be, you know, X, Y, or Z. The talent is there. We're going to go with the talent.
Please join me in thanking a wonderful